Alright, so Soomin Park did that interview with MMORPG.com. In that interview, he mentioned that redesigned Jumpstart servers are going to happen. So I took some time to think about how Jumpstart 1 went and what I would like to see for Jumpstart 2 that definitely won't happen. So in this video, I'm going to be using the term legacy a lot. When I'm talking about legacy players or legacy servers, I'm talking about ones that have been around for a while, as opposed to new players or new servers. While not perfect, I think Jumpstart was a mild success. There are a lot of threads and comments of people who say that they started with Jumpstart and they're still with the game to this day. It's hard to really get a metric on new players because there are a lot of people who did start Jumpstart as a alt roster. But I still see a ton of people from my Jumpstart server in Party Finder. But the biggest flaw in Jumpstart was really that it didn't help people with horizontal progression. And because of that, these Jumpstart players are still getting gatekept. While it wasn't a problem when they were on their own server, not connected to the rest of the region, their experience would completely change once they were connected to legacy servers. When it comes to things like skill points and runes, there's no way that a new player can show that they have achieved these things, which can lead a lot of party leaders to just assume that people from Jumpstart servers haven't gotten them all yet. People like to judge on roster levels for some reason, even though that has no translation to skill. At most, it just shows some sort of dedication to the game. Personally, I think roster level should be a hidden and personal thing because titles already do enough job that people try to use roster level for to begin with. And then the last one and the biggest one is going to be cards. While you do not need these card sets completed to play the game, they are now competing with people who do have LOS 30 or Lost Wing Cliff 30. So a little rant about cards. I still think they are one of the worst systems I've ever experienced in all of gaming. This is a system that if you are lucky, this might take a year. But I know day one players who have just gotten LOS 30 within the last couple of months. And yes, I know Jumpstart did have a vendor that had card packs on it, but it clearly wasn't enough. Because every time I get an Ezekiel game replying to my lobby, they're deep divers. They still do not have LOS. They really need to cut that time window down. May it be removing the 4th and or 5th awakening, or just adding the rest of LOS and LWC to Wandering Merchants. I've also mentioned this before in one of my other videos, but there needs to be more breakpoints. So instead of it just being you get more damage at LOS 16 and LOS 30, if it was changed so you get 2% damage per every 2 or 3 awakenings, it would be a lot less punishing and I think it'd be a lot better for Party Finder. Additionally, I also think the execution of cards kind of just sucks. Besides ESO running Laz Umar, everyone just uses the same set, so it's not like you really make anything unique out of it. I think it's just kind of a dud overall. Now the good news is Horizontal Express was announced at LoWon and it is already out in KR. So I used an invent thread and also Miso's video to take a good look at the rewards. Links to those below. So the short version of this is, this event will give people most of their purple runes. It will give them a couple legendaries, but not all. You're also getting the majority of your skill points to this. Overall, it looks really good. I think it'll help new players have their characters feel a bit more complete and also get rid of some of the negativity towards newer players. Now, one thing missing from that is the previous topic, which is cards. They are not part of Horizontal Express. So it's safe to say that Jumpstart servers will be on their own at first and then merged onto the rest of the region. I think one of the main reasons why they go for this design is so they can try to simulate our experience, the legacy experience, as much as possible by having everybody just kind of gear up together and go through the content together as opposed to having super jacked people at the start. Now there has been some conversations about market that's a little bit of a give or take, so let's quickly talk about that. So since this is a fresh server, a fresh economy, having enough accessories on the market for people to actually make builds just isn't a thing. Having alts outside of an Express on a Jumpstart server is just pure misery because there's just not going to be enough stuff on the market to actually make a build. Because the thing is, legacy servers, they got to saturate the market because we had so much downtime between content. People did Argos with barely anything, and then we had months and months of just doing Argos to fill the market with legendaries, so on and so forth with relics, then on to ancients. But for this lack of building, there are people who say Jumpstart being separated is bad. But if they're integrated right from the start, it wouldn't be that great for them either. They're dealing with a 2-year-old economy. At the start of Jumpstart 2, they're not going to be paying 70, 80 gold plus for a stack of fish. Things are just going to be generally more affordable for a while there on Jumpstart. But again, the downside is that there's just not much. Though I will say, if they were integrated right off the bat, I think legacy players would be selling a lot more mid-level accessories for cheaper because there would actually be a demand for them for new players as opposed to people making jacked alts. After going through Reddit and YouTube comments, I think the biggest argument to why servers should be separate, people who say they played on Jumpstart said it was a lot better when they were separated. They overall had a very positive experience when it was separated. You can find posts of people saying that it got worse as they merged. Now, I had a conversation with Sivo. he doesn't think they should be separated because we do have a lot of learning and teaching resources already. And then something I do agree with is that we need to incentivize people to help out new players more. But the problem I had with this first reason, while yes, you can find learning parties looking for group Discord and find people to help you teach and learn, it is not the instinct of a fresh player, a casual, to frame one and think, oh, well, I'm going to go find a community or something to help teach me how to play the game. They're just going to jump into Party Finder. I think things like community resources are great, but there should be a little bit more from the game itself. That's where the conversation turned to how there could be a system or a way to make legacy players help new players. And honestly, it's pretty simple. Making a party or raid wide extra loot for having a Mokoko in the party, and also just adding titles in that people can earn for these runs. I think something like this for helping people for their first 3 to 5 runs is not that bad. It'll get these players in the door, they'll get to experience the raid firsthand. Along with that, they'll have their first clear title. I think these parties in Party Finder should have a different color frame or background to really show that, hey, you're going to get more out of playing with this party. Or this could be jail. Depends how you look at it. A lot of people who talk about Jumpstart also talk about solo raiding. As far as that goes, I think it will help new players, but it really just depends on how they execute it. And then keep in mind that they did say that they really want the end game, the actual end game, like the recent stuff, to be group content. So solo raid is more of a catch-up mechanic still. So here are some ideas and things I would love to see for Jumpstart 2. Earlier I mentioned that it can be hard for somebody to make builds for alts because the market isn't saturated. In exchange, I think every character on that server should have a free 4x3. This allows them to play the alts, experience the game, and still get through a good chunk of raiding, and just buy them some time for the market to fill up with accessories. Honestly, I still think this should just be a total game standard to have a free 4x3 until 1539. Tells people to try out builds better as opposed to just trying an Intrixian or actually having to make a new build to try out your other engraving. I think a pretty dedicated player who gets into Jumpstart and plays it, by the end of it, they should have like a 1600 main and 1540 alts. Horizontal Express is going to handle a good amount of their runes and skill points, but it is up to them to get the rest of it. But when it comes to the big things, the cards, I think by the time that they finish Jumpstart, the average player should have LOS and Lost Wing Cliff 18. Deep Dive and You Have a Plan just aren't enough. And cards are just overall really demotivating knowing that you have like a year to finish. Now, I think Jumpstart events are inherently flawed. For example, right now, we don't have Path to Soul Eater, we're waiting for Path to Theamine, and we're also waiting for Jumpstart. So it's kind of detrimental to start the game right now, because the best event is going to be Jumpstart, and if somebody starts right now, they're going to be on a different server that isn't the Jumpstart server, and so when Jumpstart comes around and they want to reap the benefits for it, they got to make another roster on that server and probably abandon this roster. There needs to be some fundamental change to design, so it is always a good time to join, then Jumpstart is going to be a great time to join. Which means there should pretty much always be events active for new players. Because let's be honest, Horizontal Express being a limited time event is just god awful. That should be a standard. Let every fresh account have a Story Express. We jack up the rewards a little bit more to help them out, but I think at this point we really should have something always there to help new players. And something that tends to get glanced over a lot is returning players. They're in a similar boat where they just kind of get cucked. Kind of have to abandon their roster if they want to go get all the benefits of Jumpstart. So something that Vindictus does is after like 30 days or so of inactivity, when you log in, you actually get a little care package of items and even a full set of gear, all bound by the way. I think Lost Ark should adopt something similar to that, something to reward returning players for coming back. Because again, returning players just kind of get forgotten in a lot of this conversation. Now, something I've seen a lot of Jumpstart players say, they actually don't think that legacy accounts should have access to Jumpstart and their events. Because there are a lot of people who just made a second roster on Jumpstart. You can tell that because there was like re-clear parties and a lot of gatekeeping going on in Jumpstart from the get-go. But the thing is, if the event is so good and the profit is so good for these people to abuse these servers, they're gonna make a new account if they can't do it on their own. So I don't think this is something you can really stop. Alright, so before you call me crazy, hear me out. I'm pretty sure I heard before that KR has their older servers locked, and I think our legacy servers in the West should be locked as well. There's a couple reasons that made me come to this conclusion why we should have our servers locked and just have a new player's server. Now, I don't think people should be stuck on that new player server forever. There should be either a time limit or a milestone for people to be able to transfer their roster from the new server onto a legacy server. Because earlier I talked about how Jumpstart characters are generally seen as basically untouchables in Party Finder. Because of that server being in their character profile, they're ready to just getting shit on. So I think having players graduate off those servers would be a really good idea. And the second major reason is actually a bit of a throwback to my last video, which is talking about botting and RMT. If AGS is actually adamant on getting rid of the bots, with legacy servers being locked up, we could eventually have servers that are bot free, which means all these bots are going to be forced to roll on the new server, which legacy servers would be running smoother, but Also, the new server might be a little rough because depending how many bots there are. So they would have to make it a pretty juicy server and also really be active on banning these guys. But the thing is, if these bots are all on the same server, they're going to stand out so much easier. And in theory, if they are actively banning these bots, they have one place to look basically. Overall, I think it's a really win-win situation. The elephant in this room is obviously they haven't coded in or developed transferring. If they had the ability to roster transfer, they would be definitely trying to sell it to us by now. So unfortunately, this is just an idea, a hopium copium that I know will never happen. I really do hope they make a good amount of improvements to Jumpstart, advertise it well, and make it a great success. The truth is that gaming is just carried by casual, and Lost Ark does not have a good track record with keeping their casuals. We're a very hardcore community. This is generally how a lot of MMOs go, especially the free-to-play ones. I have vague plans to eventually make a video talking about hardcore versus casual, just as a fun fact, but that'll be the end of this video. That was a look at the past, the present, and a hope for the future of Jumpstart. Now, a question for you is, how do you think Jumpstart 1 went? And what would you like to see for Jumpstart 2? Let me know in the comments. I'm about to go.